This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. H.W. Crocker III is Vice President and Executive Editor of Regnery Publishing. He is a former speechwriter, editorial writer, and author of best-selling books such as Robert E. Lee on Leadership. 20 years ago, he wrote this: Triumph, the Power and the Glory of the Catholic Church, a 2,000-year history. It's now available in an updated and expanded edition. I'd like to welcome to Catholic Forum H.W. Crocker. Thanks for being here today.
Great. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
And it's okay if I call you Harry?
Sure, that's fine.
All right, I appreciate that. So, Harry, what did I miss my introduction? What did I leave out that you need to tell me?
Well, maybe why I wrote the book in the first place.
Well, actually, that's one of my questions. So,
okay, I'm a convert, and when I converted to Catholicism, I wished there had been a book like this. I decided to write the book I wished I had, which was a comprehensive but accessible history of the Catholic Church. Now, there are some good ones out there, but most of the ones that were newish tended to be too apologetic in all the wrong ways. Mm-hmm. And also, one of the great failings, of course, of church history that's often written is to be a bit dry, dull, seems abstruse. And I wanted something that would be exciting as I believe the faith to be. And I often describe this book as Catholic history as written for an adolescent boy. I'm sort of an overgrown boy myself, but so the book is actually full of adventures and stories of knights and Roman legions and conquistadors. And there are more references in this book to the French Foreign Legion than I think you'll find in any other Catholic history. But that was part of the whole point. I wanted a page turn. I mean, I'm a popular novelist as well as being a popular historian. And I wanted something a story that drew people in and that led them, I hoped, eventually to my conviction, which is if you believe in history, the Catholic Church is the church of history. And if you believe that history is something that can be tested and assessed, it seems to me, in my faith in many ways, is very simple, which is that the resurrection was an historical event. Mm-hmm. And the best explanation we have for what occurred at the resurrection, after the resurrection, is what we have in the New Testament, in the Gospels and in the Acts of the Apostles, and in the Church, the existence and historical practices of it. So in many ways, the argument is very simple, but it's also, of course, the faith in all of its depth is profound. I think anyone who, especially coming at it as a convert, it's like putting on a new pair of glasses. You suddenly think that there are new dimensions to life. You recognize new dimensions to life that have always been there, but that you had poo-pooed or ignored because of secular blinders or blinders in faith that wasn't as effulgent as.
So you converted first, and then you wrote the book?
Yes.
How long did it take
you? And I will
say
this, that I know for a fact that the book has won converts because people have come up to me and told me so.
Sure.
Though I will say I've also had this humbling experience. This came from a man who eventually converted, but he told me that when he was in the process of converting, someone gave him Triumph, and he said, "I read that book, great book, but I have to say, when I closed the book, I thought, what a screwed up church." because of all the scandals and
and he was right
that are covered in the book.
That's funny. So how long did it take you to do all that research?
Well, I was originally a newspaper man, and I'd also been a speechwriter. And in both of those jobs, especially being a newspaper man, you're facing deadly, daily deadlines.
Right.
And so I learned how to be both a quick study and to write quickly. In fact, one of the secrets I think of writing is writing well is writing under really stiff deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can succeed at that, it forces you to get to the point.
Right.
It
Right.
forces you to be try to catch the reader's imagination and keep it.
Yeah.
And that's what
Mm.
I've striven to do in everything.
Now, you wrote this book 20 years ago, but it's just recently been updated. What are some of the updates that we can look forward
Well,
to?
yeah, no, I'm extraordinarily happy that the book has never gone out of print,
Right.
but when they asked me to update it, they also said, when we republish it, we're going to do it in a hardcover edition, which is great because throughout the years, the hardcover is not available anymore. You had to get the paperback, and which was fine. But if people who gave gifts, for Christmas or not so much baptism, but confirmations or
Right.
graduations, they wanted to give a hardcover. So I'm glad this book is in hardcover. But the hardcover covers the end of Pope John Paul II, covers the certificate of Pope Benedict. It takes us up through Pope Francis, at least up to, when I turned the book in this year, the updates in this year. So it's pretty much up to date. It's got
Yeah.
pretty much everything.
Does it talk about the sexual abuse crisis? I would imagine, because when it was published, I guess maybe was it during the crisis that it
The
was published?
crisis took off really right after the book was published.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of the interviews I did originally for the book ended up being about that.
Yeah.
So it touches on the crisis on that, but in this context, I don't spend a lot of time on it because I bring it up in the context of the pontificate of Pope Benedict,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned that he faced, when he became Pope, three great challenges. One of them was that, and the other two are really more enduring. I mean, the sexual abuse crisis has statistically pretty much been cleaned up, as disastrous as it was,
Right.
and as big as the financial penalties still are, and of course the human cost is still enormous. But the other two crises are the ever-present crisis of radical Islam, which has been fighting the Catholic faith for forever, and what Benedict himself called the tyranny of relative, which in the West is the greatest crisis of all.
Mm-hmm.
It's typified in part by what we talk about now. We talk about the nuns, the wrong sorts of nuns, not the
Right.
N-U-N-S nuns, but the N-O-N-E-S nuns, these young people who in the 21st century have completely fallen away from any form of Christian belief, and really as far as I can analyze the data and the surveys, for horrible reasons. I mean, the reasons are not ones of theology necessarily. They're not highfalutin reasons. They're not reasons you're going to argue people out of because they have a really strong, coherent argument against the faith. It's because in the era of social media and video games and all these things, they've really, I know this sounds harsh, but it's what the data reveals, is that they've cultivated shallowness.
Mm-hmm.
Most parents think that their sons or daughters, if they fall away from the faith in college. But in fact, that's only when it becomes evident to the parents. There's some really interesting data on this, that parents assume that their children are much more religious than they are during their teen years.
Hmm.
And most young people who fall away from the faith are falling away from the faith around the age of, say, 14.
Mm-hmm.
So these are people who are not, refuting Aquinas or Augustine or St. Anselm or anything like that. It's that they're finding, believe it or not, and as horrible as it sounds, it's again cultivating shallowness. They're finding enough spiritual meaning, if you want to put it that way, in the competition of video games, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or in just social media. It's a bizarre and difficult nut to crack, but that's going to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Well, we have to identify the problem before we can ever help or start to solve it. So I think pointing that out is a very important thing. My guest today on Catholic Forum is H.W. Crocker III. The book is entitled "The Power or the Triumph, the Power and the Glory of the Catholic Church." And when you were researching this book, Harry, what surprised you the most?
That's a good question. And one thing that surprised me was when I embarked on the church history, I thought I would be much more sympathetic to the Eastern Orthodox. Pope John Paul II used to talk about other popes talk about the two lungs of the church.
Right.
And but I found myself in analyzing the history, finding myself very unsympathetic to the Eastern Orthodox, who struck me as, gosh, they should be. I think their quibbles with the Catholic faith are completely unfounded and driven by petty national jealousy, among other things. That's what I believe history shows.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one surprise, but for the most part, I was just gratified that the faith I had embraced, the more I got to know it, even the truer and better I found it to be.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it didn't change your mind. That would have been horrible. Do you have any favorite saints or popes that you kind of encountered during the research?
Well, I suppose I do, but rather than pointing out my personal favorites, I like to point out, to my mind, again, what the history tells us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say there are three really important saints that reveal a lot about the faith. The first would be Saint Augustine. I mean, there are some who say that if you were to throw away all the theological writings we've had in the history of the church, the one you'd want to save is Saint Augustine. And Saint Augustine, of course, can do giant works. Interestingly, his most influential work is a short personal work, his own confession on how he eventually found it out. And then there's Thomas Aquinas. You want to talk logic? You want to talk reason? You can't beat Thomas Aquinas. So there's that. And I would think, to my mind, to my personal mind, that would be the most important saint, the Catholic theologian. But here's another lesson in history. Just as Saint Augustine's Confession is his most influential work, despite it, it's not compared to his other books, it's not like a huge theological treatise. Mm-hmm. The Confession, it's a personal memoir. But it would be Saint Francis. When you ask most people, in my experience, and this was the case in most history, certainly, their favorite saint is Saint Francis, which I think goes to show that all of the intellectual power and depth, philosophical power and depth, what really touches people is the personal example. The example of holiness, the example of joy, which is exhibited.
So what do you want your readers to take away from the book? I mean, obviously, you want them to be excited about the church because it's written like a I guess you would call it a Marvel movie or Indiana Jones type thing. But what else do you want them to take away?
More than anything else, I want them to take away the idea that the church is true.
True.
Because that is everything, obviously. And it seems to me something that's lacking, especially in young people today. I remember when I was searching out, what led me to the Catholic Church ultimately was a desire to know truth. And I think that's lacking in a lot of people. They think, I believe this, I believe that, I think this, I think that, and that's sufficient. That was never sufficient for me. I knew what I thought, right. But that didn't matter to me. I wanted to know what was actually true. And is Darwinism true? Is evolution true? Up to a point. But yeah, I found that it did not answer and was certainly at best a very incomplete answer for me. Was science true? Up to a point, but science has many open questions and often changes its mind on different things. And you go down all. But for me, once you find truth, and this is both Catholic theology, but it's also how I approach things. Was if you find the truth, then you have to conform your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if the resurrection is as it appears in the New Testament, and you find that convincing, which I do, I find that to be, these are historically worthy documents. It's true. Then I have to figure out, if there's any other questions I have about the faith, how to conform my mind to that truth, because I'm starting from it. This is objective truth. What else does it tell us? And so that, more than anything else, I'd like them to think it's a good read. I'd like them to think it's exciting and inspiring, but I would like them to close the book and say, yep, that is truth in all its triumph and glory, and also all its, sin and occasional corruption or chaos or war or famine or terror, or everything else that's part of the human experience.
Right. Who did you write the book for? Converts like yourself, or for Catholics who'd like to have a refresher or a little bit of enlightenment? What was your target audience?
All of the above.
Yeah.
And certainly I had an evangelical, in part an evangelical desire for it, that it would in fact bring over more people like me.
Yeah.
Not just like me, but the people who are looking for the truth, people who wanted a guide to Catholic history. And so, but I found out that many of the readers who liked it the most have been cradle Catholics, just wanted to, like you said, refresher. Mm-hmm. I also, this is a shocking conversation I had. I was giving a speech 20 years ago, when the book first came out, and a man came up to me and said, the book had been sort of the straw that broke the camel's back and brought him to conversion, which was more remarkable than it sounds, because this man was a former Protestant pastor. So he gave up everything, which also put a great weight of responsibility on my shoulders. Oh my God, I hope I'm right. But anyways, those are of course shocking, affirming stories in some ways to hear. But that's what I would like. I'd like people to find the book a confirmation of their faith if they have it, or a reason to investigate the faith further.
Just have a couple of minutes left, Harry. What does the past history of our church tell us about the future? What is the future of our church?
Well, it's interesting. When I was updating this book, I was also updating another book of mine, which is going to be reissued in January, which is a history of the American military from pre-colonial years, like 400 years. And process of updating that book and updating Triumph, I had two reverse or contrasting experiences. Mm-hmm. I found myself, looking at the history of the American military, finding myself very depressed about prospects for America, to be blunt. But I found myself in updating Triumph, the Catholic history, quite optimistic, because it's a reminder of how much the church has been through and how much the church is the ultimate survivor. I mean, through crises that seemed overwhelming again and again and again, from the Arian crisis early on in the church to the Protestant Revolution to, go back to the Dark Ages. Mm-hmm. Dark Ages, if you were a pope, you had about a 30% chance of being murdered and being killed off. Under Napoleon, you had the church, the Pope being kidnapped. You had the French Revolution. People actually at physical war with the church, or again, the Spanish Revolution, or Civil War. So the church has been through a lot. And yet, no matter how bloodied its nose might be, it keeps coming back miraculously. And whenever things get really, really dark, and I don't mean this to sound like a happy clappy thing. It's just true. Saints arise. Saints arise, and the church rejuvenates itself. And I don't see that process.
Well, the book is titled Triumph, the Power, and the Glory of the Catholic Church. It's a perfect Christmas gift for anyone on your list who might be a cradle Catholic, might be someone who is looking for a church to join, someone who might be in the RCIA program at your parish, or just to read yourself. And how can our listeners get a copy? Would it be through your publisher?
Yeah, you can go to Regnery, or you can go to any of the normal outlets. It should be in all the bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Wherever you get your books, it should be there.
Okay, very good. H.W. Crocker III, thanks so much for spending time with us on Catholic Forum. Have a wonderful Advent season and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you very much.